The Galactic Council had existed for 12,000 years. 17 different alien species worked together to rule the known universe. They kept peace between worlds. They made laws that everyone followed. And they kept a careful list of which species were strong and which species were weak. Every alien race knew its place. The strong ones ruled. The weak ones obeyed. This was how things had always been, and the Council believed this was how things would always be. Then humanity arrived. The year was 2247 by Earth's calendar. A human exploration ship had traveled beyond the edge of known space and found an alien signal. Within 3 months, official contact was made. Within 6 months, humanity was invited to send representatives to the Great Council Station at the center of the galaxy. The Council members studied everything they could find about humans before the meeting. What they learned did not impress them. Humans had no claws. They had no fangs or venom. Their skin was soft and easy to cut. They had no armor, no natural weapons of any kind. They lived short lives compared to most Council species. They needed to eat and drink constantly just to survive. They could not see well in the dark. They could not hear sounds that other species heard easily by every measure the Council used. Humans were one of the weakest intelligent species ever discovered. High Arbiter Vexron was the leader of the Council that year. He belonged to the HFY, a race of tall reptilian beings with scales as black as space itself. The HFY had conquered dozens of worlds through pure strength. Vexron himself stood 8 feet tall and could crush stone with his bare claws. He had fought in wars and killed enemies with his own hands. He respected strength and despised weakness. When he read the reports about humans, he laughed. These creatures rule a planet? He asked his advisors. They have spread to other worlds? How is this possible? A child of my species could tear one of them apart. His advisors had no good answer. It seemed like a mistake of the universe. Somehow, these soft and fragile beings had built starships and traveled between stars. It made no sense. No matter, Vexron decided. They will learn their place soon enough. The human ship arrived at the Council Station on a bright day in the Galactic Standard Calendar. It was called the Endurance, a name that meant nothing to the aliens who watched it dock. The ship was small compared to Council vessels. Its weapons were primitive. Its shields were weak. Ambassador Katie Warren stepped off the ship first. She was a woman of 43 years, with short brown hair and calm gray eyes. She had spent 20 years as a diplomat, solving problems and making peace between angry nations back on Earth. The Council had requested humanity's best negotiator, and she was the one her government had chosen. Behind her came a security team of 6 soldiers. They wore simple gray uniforms and carried weapons at their sides. Their leader was a man named Danny Cole. He was 38 years old, born in a place called Texas on the human homeworld. He was not especially tall by human standards. He was not especially large. He had a plain face and brown hair cut short. He looked, to alien eyes, completely ordinary. Vexron met them in the main greeting hall. This was a chamber built to impress visitors. The ceiling rose hundreds of feet above the floor. Statues of great council leaders lined the walls. The floor was made of polished stone brought from a dozen different worlds. Vexron looked down at the humans with barely hidden contempt. They were so small, so soft. He could smell their strange warm-blooded scent, so different from his own cold reptilian body. "Welcome to the Council Station," he said. His voice was deep and rough. A translation device turned his hissing words into human English. "We are pleased that you have come such a long way to visit us." Katie Warren smiled politely. She had dealt with difficult people before. She recognized the look in Vexron's eyes. He was not pleased to see them. He thought they were beneath him. "Thank you for receiving us," she said. Her voice was steady and warm. "Humanity is honored to meet the great species of the Council." Vexron's thin lips curled slightly. "Yes, I am sure you are. The Council has ruled this galaxy for a very long time. There is much you could learn from us." Behind Katie, Danny Cole said nothing. He simply watched. He noticed how the Korvathi guards held their weapons. He noticed how the alien servants kept their eyes down. He noticed how every other species in the room seemed to fear the tall, reptilian figure in front of them. He had seen this kind of thing before. Bullies were the same everywhere, it seemed. Even in space. The next 3 days were filled with formal meetings and official ceremonies. Katie attended sessions of the Council and listened to debates about trade and territory. She smiled and nodded and said polite things. She was gathering information, learning how things worked, figuring out who had power and who did not. Danny and his team stayed close to her at all times. They were watched constantly by Council security forces. The aliens did not try to hide their surveillance. They wanted the humans to know they were being monitored. On the second day, a Korvathi soldier walked directly into Danny in a hallway. It was not an accident. The alien was testing him, trying to see how the human would react. Danny simply stepped aside and continued walking without a word. The Korvathi laughed and said something in his own language to his companions. Danny did not need a translation to know it was an insult. On the third day, Vexron announced that there would be a special demonstration. This was an old Council tradition, he explained. When a new species joined the galactic community, the established powers would show their capabilities. It was meant to be educational. Katie understood immediately what this really was. It was a show of force. The Council wanted to frighten humanity. They wanted to make clear who was in charge. She looked at Danny. He met her eyes and gave a small nod. They had prepared for something like this. Earth's government had warned them that the aliens might try to intimidate them. "We would be happy to attend," Katie said smoothly. Vexron smiled. His teeth were sharp and numerous. "Excellent. I think you will find it very informative. You will see what real strength looks like." That night, Katie and Danny spoke privately in their quarters. They knew they were being listened to, so they were careful with their words. "Tomorrow will be interesting," Katie said. Danny nodded. "They want to scare us." "Yes, it won't work." Katie looked at him for a long moment. Danny Cole was not a boastful man. He did not make promises he could not keep. If he said something would not work, he meant it. "No," she agreed finally. "It won't." Neither of them slept much that night. They both knew that tomorrow would change everything. The Council thought they understood humans. They thought they knew what humanity was capable of. They were wrong. The demonstration hall was the largest room Katie had ever seen. It was built like an arena, with thousands of seats rising in circles around a central floor. Representatives from all 17 Council species had gathered to watch. The air buzzed with dozens of different languages and the hum of translation. Devices working overtime. Katie sat in the section reserved for human visitors. Danny stood beside her with his arms crossed. The other members of their security team sat nearby, their faces calm but their eyes alert. "Quite a show," Danny said quietly. Katie nodded. The Council had clearly put a lot of effort into this event. Bright lights illuminated the central floor. Cameras floated through the air, broadcasting the demonstration to millions of viewers across the galaxy. This was not just about intimidating the human visitors. This was about sending a message to everyone. High Arbiter Vexron stood in the center of the arena. His black scales gleamed under the lights. He raised his clawed hands, and the crowd fell silent. "Today we welcome our newest visitors to the galactic community," he announced. His voice boomed through speakers placed throughout the hall. "The humans have come from a small world on the edge of known space. They are curious about us. They wish to learn, and so we will teach them." The crowd made sounds of approval. Vexron smiled his sharp-toothed smile. "Let us begin with a display of Corvathi's strength." A section of the floor opened and a massive piece of metal rose into view. It was a thick beam of starship armor, the kind used to protect military vessels from weapons fire. A Corvathi warrior named Thrak walked forward. He was even larger than Vexron, with arms as thick as tree trunks and claws that looked like curved knives. Thrak grabbed the metal beam with both hands. The muscles under his scales bulged. With a terrible screaming sound, the metal bent. Thrak twisted it like it was soft clay, folding it in half, then half again. When he was done, the beam that could stop laser fire had been crushed into a ball the size of a human head. The crowd roared with approval. Thrak raised the crushed metal above his head in triumph. Katie kept her face neutral. Beside her, Danny simply watched without expression. Next came the Velith. These aliens looked like giant insects, with 6 legs and bodies covered in hard shells. Their arms ended in blade-like appendages that were naturally sharper than most knives. A Velith warrior stepped forward and faced a wall of reinforced material. Without hesitation, the alien began to slice. Its arm blades moved almost too fast to see. Within seconds, the wall had been reduced to ribbons. Then came the Thren, massive creatures that looked like bears with 6 legs. They were covered in thick fur that could stop most weapons. A Thren warrior stood calmly while other aliens fired energy weapons at it. The blasts hit the creature's fur and simply disappeared. The Thren did not even blink. Species after species showed their natural advantages. Some were incredibly fast. Some could produce poison from their bodies. Some could survive in the vacuum of space without protection. Each display was meant to impress and intimidate. When it was over, Vexron turned to look directly at the human section. "We have seen what the great species of the Council can do," he said. His voice was smooth, but his eyes were cold. "Now perhaps our human guests would like to participate?" The crowd murmured. This was unusual. New species were normally just observers at these events. Katie felt Danny shift beside her. She knew what Vexron was doing. He was putting them on the spot in front of the entire galaxy. If they refused, they would look weak. If they accepted, they would surely be humiliated. Either way, humanity would be shown as inferior. "We understand if you wish to decline," Vexron continued. "After all, humans have no natural advantages to display. You have no claws, no armor, no venom. Perhaps it is best if you simply watch and learn." Laughter rippled through parts of the crowd. Katie felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her composure. Danny leaned down and spoke quietly. "Let me." Katie looked at him. "Are you sure?" Yes, she trusted him. She had worked with Danny for 3 years. She had never seen him make a reckless decision. If he wanted to do this, he had a reason. "Very well," Katie called out, her voice carrying across the arena. "We will participate." Vexron's eyes widened slightly. He had not expected them to accept. But he recovered quickly and smiled again. "Excellent. Since you have no natural weapons to display, perhaps a simple test of endurance would be appropriate. Thrak will demonstrate what your bodies can withstand." The huge Corvathi warrior stepped forward again. He looked at Danny with something like pity mixed with anticipation. This would be easy. This soft little creature would break like all soft things broke. Danny walked down from the human section to the arena floor. He looked very small compared to the alien warriors around him. He wore his simple gray uniform. He carried no weapons, no armor, nothing but the clothes on his body. Thrak approached him. The Corvathi towered over the human by more than 2 feet. His clawed hands could have wrapped entirely around Danny's head. "Do not worry," Thrak said, his translator rendering the words with a mocking tone. I will try not to break you completely. Danny said nothing. He simply stood there, his arms at his sides, his breathing slow and steady. Thrak pulled back his massive arm. The muscles coiled like springs. Then he swung with all his strength, driving his fist directly into Danny's chest. The sound was tremendous. The impact echoed through the silent arena. It was a blow that could shatter stone. A blow that could dent starship armor. A blow that had killed enemies on a dozen worlds. Danny stumbled backward. 1 step, 2 steps. Then he stopped. He stood there for a moment, his head down. The crowd held its breath. Surely the human was finished. Surely he would collapse now. No soft-skinned creature could survive such a strike. Then Danny raised his head. He looked directly at Thrak. His eyes were clear. His face was calm. There was no fear in his expression. No pain. Nothing but a steady, measuring gaze. Was that supposed to hurt? The words fell into absolute silence. Every being in the arena stared at the small human who had just taken the full strength of a Kovathi warrior and remained standing. Thrak stepped back. For the first time in his life, he did not know what to do. He had felt his fist connect. He knew the force he had used. This human should be dead. At minimum, his bones should be shattered. His organs crushed dot, but the human stood there asking if it was supposed to hurt. Vexran's smile had vanished completely. He stared at Danny with something new in his reptilian eyes. Something that looked almost like fear dot in the human section. Katie Warren allowed herself a small smile. The council had wanted to show humanity its place. Instead, humanity had just shown the council something far more important. The game had changed completely. The arena erupted into chaos after Danny spoke those words. Aliens shouted at each other in a dozen languages. Translators struggled to keep up with the flood of confused voices. Some species demanded to know how this was possible. Others accused the humans of cheating somehow. Vex raised his clawed hands and called for silence. It took several minutes before the crowd finally quieted down. The High Arbiter's face was difficult to read, but his voice was tight with controlled anger when he spoke. There is clearly some deception here, he announced. The human must be wearing hidden armor, some kind of protection beneath his clothing. This is the only explanation. Katie stood up from her seat. Her voice was calm but carried clearly across the arena. There is no deception, no hidden armor, no technological enhancement of any kind. She paused to let her words sink in. Chief Cole will submit to any examination you wish to perform. This caused another wave of murmuring through the crowd. An examination would prove whether the human was telling the truth. Vexran had no choice but to agree. Medical officers from 3 different species examined Danny on the arena floor. They scanned his body with devices that could detect any hidden technology. They checked his bones, his organs, his skin. They found nothing unusual. He was exactly what he appeared to be, a normal human being with no special modifications. The examination results were displayed on giant screens throughout the arena. Danny was wearing a standard uniform made of simple fabric. Beneath that, he wore ordinary human underclothing. His body contained no cybernetic enhancements, no protective implants, nothing but flesh and bone and blood. The silence that followed was deeper than before. This was not confusion anymore. This was fear. Vexran demanded an explanation. His voice had lost its smooth confidence. How is this possible? I saw Thrak strike him. The force should have killed him. How is he still standing? Katie walked down to the arena floor. She stood beside Danny and faced the assembled representatives of the galaxy's most powerful species. You made a mistake, she said simply. You looked at humans and saw soft skin. You saw small bodies. You saw no claws or scales or natural armor. And you decided that we were weak. She let that statement hang in the air for a moment. You never asked what we do have. Katie began to explain. She told him about Earth, about the world that had created humanity. It was a planet of extremes. Burning deserts and frozen wastelands. Thick jungles and empty plains. Violent storms and long droughts. Predators with teeth and claws and crushing strength. Early humans had none of the advantages that other predators possessed. They could not run as fast as the animals they hunted. They could not fight them with claws they did not have. They could not hide in water or climb trees quickly enough to escape danger dot, so they developed something else entirely. Humans are pursuit predators, Katie explained. We evolved to chase prey over long distances. Not to catch them quickly, but to follow them until they collapsed from exhaustion. We can do this because of how our bodies work. She described human sweat glands, which allowed humans to cool their bodies while running. Most animals had to stop and rest, or they would overheat. Humans could keep going. For hours. For days if necessary. She described human legs, which were designed for efficiency over long distances. A human could not outrun a horse in a short race. But over the course of a full day, a human could run a horse to death. She described human healing. Broken bones grew back stronger than before. Injuries that would permanently disable most species were temporary inconveniences to humans. Scars formed over wounds and protected the damaged area. Our bodies are designed to take damage and keep functioning, Katie said. This is not a weakness. This is our greatest strength. We did not evolve to avoid pain. We evolved to endure it. Danny spoke then, his voice flat and matter-of-fact. I have broken this arm twice. Once when I was young, once in military service. I have cracked 6 ribs at different times. I took a bullet through my shoulder during a conflict on one of our colony worlds. I survived a ship accident that exposed my body to space for nearly a minute. I have frostbite damage across almost half my body afterward. He paused and looked around at the assembled aliens. I am considered average among human soldiers. There is nothing special about me. Every member of my security team has similar histories. The implications of this settled over the crowd like a cold wave. Thrak, the HFY warrior who had struck Danny, stared at the human with new eyes. He had thought he was hitting a fragile creature. He now understood that he had been hitting something far more dangerous. Vexron found his voice again. You are saying that all humans can endure damage like this? To varying degrees, Katie admitted. Some humans are more resilient than others. But yes, as a species, we are remarkably difficult to kill. Our bodies produce chemicals that block pain when we are injured. Our minds can override physical limits when we need to. We have a word for it in our language. We call it adrenaline. We call it willpower. We call it stubbornness. She smiled slightly. Our history is full of stories about humans who refuse to die. Soldiers who fought for hours with wounds that should have killed them instantly. Explorers who survived months in conditions that would kill other species in days. Athletes who finished races with broken bones. Ordinary people who lifted objects 10 times their normal strength to save others. Katie looked directly at Vexron. You wanted to show us our place in your hierarchy. You wanted to demonstrate that we are weak and you are strong. But you measured us by the wrong standards. We do not have claws because we do not need them. We do not have armor because our entire species is built to take damage and keep going. She gestured at Danny, who stood calmly beside her, showing no sign of the devastating blow he had received. This man took the full strength of your best warrior, and he asked if it was supposed to hurt. That is not a trick. That is not technology. That is what humans are. The arena was completely silent. Thousands of aliens sat frozen, trying to understand what they had just learned. They had invited humans here to show them who was in charge. Instead, they had discovered something that would keep them awake at night for years to come. 6 months passed after the demonstration that changed everything. The galaxy looked very different than it had before. Humanity was no longer a curiosity to be laughed at. The council had voted unanimously to grant humans full membership, not as a junior species at the bottom of the hierarchy, but as equals to the oldest and most powerful civilizations. Some had voted out of respect. Others had voted out of fear. The result was the same. Trade agreements flowed between Earth's colonies and worlds that had never spoken to humans before. Human ships now traveled freely through council space. Human merchants sold goods in alien markets. Human tourists visited planets that their grandparents had never known existed. But the changes went deeper than simple trade. Human doctors began working alongside alien medical experts. They shared their knowledge of trauma care, of how human bodies healed from terrible injuries. This knowledge proved valuable to many species who had never developed such treatments. Why would they? Their warriors either won their battles or died. The idea of surviving catastrophic damage and recovering was new to them. Human engineers brought their particular way of solving problems. When something did not work, they did not give up and try something else. They kept pushing at the problem until it broke. They built machines that other species considered impossible because no one had told them it could not be done. Council Station itself became a different place. Where once humans had been followed by suspicious guards, they now walked freely. Where once alien species had laughed at them behind their backs, they now nodded with respect. Danny Cole remained on the station as part of the permanent diplomatic security team. He had become famous across the galaxy, though he never seemed comfortable with his fame. Aliens would stop him in corridors and ask to touch his chest where Thrak had struck him. He politely declined these requests. Young aliens of various species sought him out to hear stories about Earth. They wanted to understand how humans had become what they were. Danny was not a natural storyteller, but he did his best. He told them about persistence hunting, about how early humans would follow animals across the hot savanna until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. He told them about the ancient runners who carried messages between cities, covering distances that seemed impossible. He told them about a runner from a place called Marathon who ran so far to deliver news of victory that he died upon finishing his message. He died? A young Karvathi asked, confused. Then how is this a story of strength? Danny thought about how to explain it. He knew he would probably die. He ran anyway. The message was more important than his life. That is what humans do. We decide something matters, and then we make it happen, no matter the cost to ourselves. The young aliens did not fully understand, but they remembered Ambassador Katie Warren stayed as well. She worked with council representatives to draft humanity's formal charter of cooperation. It was a document that would define humanity's relationship with the galaxy for generations to come. She spent weeks on the language, making sure every word was exactly right. When it was finished, the charter contained a simple phrase that would become famous across known space. Humanity endures. 2. Words that said everything that needed to be said. Signing ceremony was held in the same arena where Danny had taken Thrak's blow. This time, the mood was very different. No one was trying to intimidate anyone. The 17 species of the council stood alongside the human delegation as equals. Vexron himself had requested the honor of giving the opening speech. He had changed in the months since that first meeting. His arrogance had faded. In its place was something more thoughtful, more careful. When humans first came to us, we saw a weakness, Vexron admitted to the assembled crowd. We saw small bodies and soft skin. We saw no claws, no venom, no armor. We thought we knew what they were. He paused, his reptilian eyes scanning the audience. We were wrong. He turned to look at Katie and Danny, who stood nearby. We thought their lack of natural weapons meant they were defenseless. We did not understand that their entire species is a weapon, forged by their own world to survive anything the universe could throw at them. We thought we would teach them about strength. Instead, they taught us. Vexren extended his clawed hand toward Katie. The gesture had become familiar to him now. Humans shook hands when they made agreements. It seemed strange at first, but he had come to appreciate the simplicity of it. Katie took his hand carefully, mindful of his sharp claws. We are not looking for enemies, she said. Her voice carried across the arena. We never were. Humanity wants to explore, to learn, to grow alongside other species. We offer friendship to anyone who wants it. She paused, and something shifted in her expression. For just a moment, there was something ancient and predatory behind her diplomatic smile. Something that remembered hunting across endless plains. Something that remembered surviving ice ages and plagues and wars. But if anyone decides to become our enemy, they should know something first. The arena was perfectly silent. We did not know how to quit. We never learned. And no matter how long it takes, no matter how much we have to sacrifice, we will keep fighting until we win. She smiled again, and the predatory gleam faded back into her usual calm warmth. We prefer peace. We truly do. But we are very, very good at war. The charter was signed. The ceremony concluded. Humanity had officially joined the galactic community. As the crowd dispersed, Danny found himself standing beside Thrak, the Korvathi warrior who had struck him all those months ago. They had developed an unlikely friendship since then. Thrak had apologized many times for the blow, though Danny always told him it was unnecessary. I still do not understand your species, Thrak admitted. You have no natural weapons. You have short lives. You seem so fragile. Danny smiled slightly. We are fragile. We break easily. We get sick. We grow old and weak. Then how do you keep fighting? Danny considered the question. It was something he had thought about many times. Because giving up is not in our nature, he said finally. Somewhere in our history, every human who gave up too easily died. The ones who survived were the stubborn ones. The ones who kept going when there was no reason to hope. The ones who refused to stay down no matter how many times they fell. He looked at Thrak with eyes that had seen combat, that had seen death, that had seen the cold void of space. We are the descendants of the ones who did not quit. Quitting is not in our blood. It is not in our bones. It is simply not something we know how to do. Thrak nodded slowly. He still did not fully understand. But he had fought many enemies in his life, and he knew one thing for certain. He was glad that humans had chosen to be friends instead of enemies. The galaxy had been changed forever. A species that everyone had dismissed. As weak had proven itself to be something far more powerful than claws or armor or venom. Humanity had proven that the will to endure was the greatest weapon of all. And the universe would never forget it. The council called an emergency meeting the very next day. This had never happened before in response to a new species. Usually, when newcomers arrived, the council simply assigned them a rank and moved on to other business. But humanity was different. Humanity was a problem that needed to be discussed. The 17 species sent their highest representatives to the secure chamber where important decisions were made. Vexren sat at the head of the long curved table, his black scales reflecting the dim lights above. He had not slept since the demonstration. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the humans standing there asking if the blow was supposed to hurt. We must take action, Vexren said. His voice was harder than usual, rougher around the edges. These creatures are more dangerous than we realized. We should move against them before they understand their own strength. Several representatives nodded in agreement. The Veloth ambassador clicked his blade arms together nervously. I agree. If we wait, they will only grow stronger. Better to strike now while they are still few in number. But not everyone shared this view. Counselor Yema of the Thren leaned forward in her massive chair. She was old for her species, with gray streaks in her thick fur and scars from battles fought long ago. She had seen many things in her long life, and she did not frighten easily. You saw what one human endured, she said slowly. One human who claims to be average among his kind. Now imagine millions of them, billions, all of them able to take damage that would destroy our warriors. All of them refusing to stop fighting until they win or die. She looked around the table with her small dark eyes. They do not threaten or display before battle like sensible beings. They do not roar or show their strength. They simply decide that they will win, and then they refuse to stop until they do. Is that something you want to fight? The room fell quiet. Yema's words had touched something deep in each representative. They had all seen predators in their lives. They understood danger. And something about what she described felt very, very dangerous. Vexran turned to his intelligence advisors. What do we know about human history? Their wars, their conflicts? The advisors had been working through the night, searching every database for information about humanity. What they had found disturbed them deeply. One advisor, a small creature with too many eyes, stepped forward with a datapad. His voice trembled slightly as he reported. Humans have existed as a species for approximately 300,000 of their years. For most of that time, they lived in primitive conditions. They hunted animals many times their size. They survived ice ages that covered their planet in frozen water. They survived plagues that killed large portions of their population. He paused to check his notes. In their more recent history, they have fought numerous wars among themselves. Some lasted for years. Some lasted for decades. They developed weapons capable of destroying entire cities and used them against each other. Twice. Gasps came from around the table. What species would use weapons of mass destruction on their own kind? After this, they rebuilt, the advisor continued. The cities that were destroyed were reconstructed. The populations recovered. They continued advancing their technology. Within 100 years of nearly destroying themselves, they had reached their moon. Within 300 years, they had spread to other star systems. Another advisor spoke up. We found records of individual humans who displayed remarkable endurance. One crossed a frozen wasteland alone after his ship was crushed by ice. He survived for months eating whatever he could find, including the leather from his own boots. Another was shot multiple times, beaten, and thrown into freezing water. He swam to shore and walked several miles to find help before collapsing. The advisors continued with example after example. Humans who had survived impossible conditions. Humans who had kept fighting with wounds that should have killed them. Humans who had refused to surrender even when facing certain death. When the reports were finished, the chamber was silent for a long time. Finally, a representative from the Minari, a species known for their careful thinking, spoke up. We cannot fight them. The cost would be too high even if we won. And I am not certain we would win. Vexran's claws scraped against the table surface. Then what do you suggest? We simply accept these creatures as equals. After what they did to humiliate us? They did not humiliate us, Yema said quietly. We tried to humiliate them. We failed. There is a difference. The debate continued for hours. Some wanted war. Some wanted peace. Some wanted to isolate humanity and pretend they did not exist. But none of these options seemed practical. Finally, Vexran made a decision. I will speak with their ambassador alone. Perhaps we can find some understanding. The meeting with Katie Warren took place in a small room far from listening devices. Vexron had arranged it himself. He wanted no witnesses to what might be said. Katie entered alone. She wore the same simple clothing she had worn every day. She carried no weapons. She did not look intimidated. "You wanted to humiliate us," she said without anger. It was simply a statement of fact. Vexron saw no point in denying it. "Yes," Katie nodded. "I understand why. We are new. We are different. You wanted to establish the proper order of things." "Yes." Vexron found himself respecting this human despite himself. She was direct. She did not play games. "Here's what you need to understand about humanity," Katie said. She leaned forward slightly. "We have a saying on our world. What does not kill us makes us stronger. For most species, this is just a phrase. For humans, it is literally true." She explained what this meant. Human bones grew denser after they broke and healed. Human immune systems remembered diseases and became better at fighting them. Human minds adapted to trauma and found ways to keep functioning. Every challenge we face makes us better equipped to face the next one. Every enemy we fight teaches us something. Every war we survive leaves us stronger than before. She let that sink in. You wanted to show the galaxy how weak we are. Instead, you showed us something about ourselves. You reminded us what we are capable of. And you showed every human watching that broadcast that we have nothing to fear from the Council. Vexron felt cold despite his cold blood. He had made a terrible mistake. He had tried to break humanity's spirit and had instead forged it stronger. "What do you want?" he asked finally. Katie smiled. It was not a threatening smile, but there was something behind her eyes that made Vexron uncomfortable. "We want what every species wants. A place in the galaxy, trade, cooperation, peace." She paused. "But if anyone tries to take those things from us, they should understand something very important." "What?" "We do not know how to quit. We never learned. And we never will." Vexron stared at her for a long moment. Then he did something he had never done before in his long career as High Arbiter. He nodded with respect to a species he had considered inferior. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "we can find a way to work together." Katie extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. After a moment, Vexron took it.